My family demanded I give my $37,000 savings to my 4-year-old golden child brother who never worked. I told them, hell no. They kicked me out. But I got a job, my own place, and blocked them all, while they're left with nothing. I'm 19 years old. I study business administration at the local university, and for the last 4 years, I've basically worked at everything you can imagine to save money. You know, waitress, cashier at a supermarket, tutoring. I even took care of kids and dogs, whatever it was, because since I was 15, I had this dream of starting my own business, something related to digital marketing and social media for small businesses. And what happened about 2 months ago with my family basically forced me to choose between my future and them, and I guess I chose my future, even though that means I now practically have no family. The thing is, I never imagined we'd get to this point. I mean, I always knew my brother Austin was my parents' golden child. That was obvious, since I can remember. But I never thought they'd go so far as to demand that I give him all my saved money, just because he can't keep his life together. Let me start from the beginning, so you understand all the context. I grew up in a family that always had this super unequal dynamic between Austin and me. He's 24 years old, so he's 5 years older than me, and since we were little, my parents treated him like he was this precious jewel that had to be protected and indulged in everything. I, on the other hand, was always the responsible one, the one who had to work twice as hard to receive half the recognition. When Austin got a C in school, my parents would say, "Oh, poor thing. He must be stressed. Let's take him out to dinner to cheer him up." When I got an A, it was like, well, that's what's expected of you. Why would we congratulate you for doing your job? You know what I mean? It was always like that. And I kind of accepted it because I thought that's how families were. That there's always a favorite child and you have to deal with it. Austin went to college, studied, I don't know what communications thing. You don't think he even knows what he studied. He graduated like 2 years ago. And since then, he basically hasn't worked. And when I say he hasn't worked, I mean he's literally had maybe 3 jobs in these 2 years, and he didn't last more than 2 months at any of them because he always had some excuse. That the boss was an idiot, that the job was way below his capabilities, that they didn't pay him enough, that the schedule didn't work for him. Anyway, always something. My parents, of course, defended him every time, said it was normal for a recent graduate to have trouble finding his place in the working world, that it was a matter of time until he found the perfect job. Meanwhile, he lived at home without paying rent, without contributing anything, playing video games all day and going out with his friends like he had no responsibilities. I, meanwhile, started working at 15, as soon as I could get my first legal job at an ice cream shop. I earned minimum wage, but I didn't care because I had this clear goal in my head. I wanted to save enough money so that when I graduated from college, I could start my own business without having to ask for loans or depend on anyone. I studied marketing in all the elective classes I could, learned about social media, graphic design, project management, all on my own besides school. I worked after school, on weekends, during vacations, literally any free time I had. My friends went out partying and I was working. They went on spring break trips and I was doing double shifts. I'm not complaining, seriously, because I knew why I was doing it. But I want you to understand the sacrifice that money represented. By the time I was 17, I already had like $15,000 saved, and I felt super proud of myself. I opened a separate savings account, one that only I could touch. Thank God I did that. Otherwise, my parents would have had access, and you know how that story would have ended. And I kept working. At 18, I got a better paying job as an administrative assistant at a small company, and that allowed me to save faster. By my 19th birthday, so like 4 months ago, I had $37,000 in that account. $37,000 that I had earned with my own effort, working literally hundreds and hundreds of hours, sacrificing social life, sacrificing rest, sacrificing typical teenage experiences. That money was my ticket to independence, to my dream, to my future. You know what I mean? Well, turns out about 3 months ago, Austin decided it was time for him to move out of my parents' house. Surprise, surprise. At 24, he finally wanted to become independent. Not because he had gotten a stable job or anything like that, no. Just because supposedly he was tired of my parents bugging him about finding employment, and because one of his friends told him about this super nice apartment she had gotten and he wanted one like that too. He started looking for apartments, but obviously all the decent places required you to have a job, references, security deposit, first month's rent, you know, the basics that any responsible adult needs to have before moving out. Austin had none of that. Literally nothing. He had no job, no savings, nothing but the desire to live alone. Then one day he came home super excited because he had found this apartment, like a pretty nice place in an expensive area of the city, and he was convinced it was perfect for him. The problem, obviously, was that he needed like $4,000 for the deposit and first month's rent, plus other moving expenses and furniture because he didn't own anything. In total, he was talking about needing like $8,000 or $10,000 to be able to move. My parents, of course, didn't have that money because they've never been good at saving. Ironically, they always criticized me for being too stingy with my money. And Austin obviously didn't have anything saved either, because he hadn't worked consistently in years. That's when all this drama started. One night, I think it was a Friday, I came home after my shift at work, tired and just wanting to eat something and go to sleep, and my parents told me they needed to talk to me about something important. We sat in the living room, the three of us, and my mom started with this conversation that from the beginning made my hair stand on end because she had that tone of voice she uses when she wants to manipulate you emotionally. You know, that super sweet and soft voice that's like poisoned honey. She told me that Austin had found a wonderful apartment and that it was a unique opportunity for him to finally settle down and really start his adult life, that this was the push he needed to mature and get a good job, because according to her, Austin's problem was that living at home didn't give him enough motivation to try hard. I still didn't understand where all this was going, so I just nodded while she talked. Then my dad jumped in and got straight to the point. Something that in retrospect I appreciate because at least he didn't keep beating around the bush. He told me they knew I had been saving money for years, which surprised me because I never talked much about my savings with them, precisely to avoid situations like this, and that they had thought it would be a good idea for me to help Austin with the apartment deposit and initial expenses. I was like, okay, I can help with something. I was thinking maybe $500 or $1,000, you know, a reasonable amount to help my brother but without significantly compromising my savings. But then my mom said the number, and I swear I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. She said they needed me to give Austin $37,000, basically all my saved money. Because according to her, Austin needed not just the deposit but also money to live on while he got a job, money for furniture, money for his car that needed repairs, money to basically establish his whole life. And she said it like it was the most normal thing in the world, like she was asking me to lend her $20, not my complete savings from 4 years of work. I stayed silent for a moment, because honestly I couldn't process what I had just heard. I thought maybe I had misunderstood. That maybe they said 3,700, and I heard 37,000. But no. When I asked them to repeat it, my dad confirmed the full number. $37,000. Everything. They wanted me to give Austin absolutely all my money. And when I say they wanted, they weren't asking. They were basically saying that's what was going to happen. As if they had already decided for me and this conversation was just a formality to inform me of their decision. I told them no, obviously. I explained that money was for my business, that I had worked 4 years to save it, that it was my future, my security, my independence. I told them I could help Austin with a reasonable amount, like $2,000 or $3,000 maximum, but that I wasn't going to give him all my money. My mom immediately started with the emotional manipulation, saying that I was their daughter, that family helps each other, that Austin was my brother, and that he would do the same for me if the situations were reversed, which is a huge lie because Austin has never done anything for anyone but himself. My dad was more aggressive, said I was selfish, that I lived under his roof without paying rent, conveniently forgetting that I'm 19 years old and still in college, that everything I had was thanks to them, that I owed them this. I tried to reason with them. I really did. I explained my business plan. I showed them on my laptop all the research I had done, the courses I had taken, the contacts I had developed. I told them that with that money I could establish a real company that would generate income, that it was an investment in my future, not just money saved without purpose. But they didn't care about any of that. My mom kept going on about how family comes first, that the business could wait, that I was young and would have other opportunities. My dad said that if I really was as good at business as I claimed, then I could save that money again in the future, but that Austin needed help now. The argument got more and more intense. I started crying, not because I was sad, but because I was furious, frustrated, betrayed. How could they ask me this? How could they expect me to sacrifice 4 years of my life to solve Austin's problems caused by his own irresponsibility? Because let's be honest, if Austin had worked even part-time during these 2 years since he graduated, he would have his own money saved. If he had been responsible with his finances, he wouldn't need his younger sister to give him $37,000. But no, he had spent 2 years playing video games and living free at my parents' house, and now I was supposed to pay for his decisions. I told them no, over and over, no matter how they phrased it or how much they tried to manipulate me. My answer was no. Finally, my dad stood up and said I had a week to think about it, that if in a week I hadn't changed my mind, I would have to find another place to live, because they weren't going to keep supporting such a selfish and ungrateful daughter. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were threatening to kick me out of the house if I didn't give all my money to my brother. I went up to my room and cried like I hadn't cried in years. Not just because of the situation, but because I realized that for my parents, I really didn't matter as much as Austin. That my future and my well-being were worth less than my brother's whims. The following week was absolute hell. My parents wouldn't talk to me except to make passive-aggressive comments about how selfish I was. Austin started sending me messages, saying that because of me, he couldn't move out, that I was a bad sister, that family means sacrificing for each other. My mom would make dinner for my dad and Austin, but wouldn't serve me anything. Literally acted like I didn't exist. Every day, they asked me if I had changed my mind. And every day I said no. My determination only got stronger with each manipulation attempt. Because I realized that if I gave in now, they would keep expecting me to sacrifice my life and my goals for Austin forever. I also called my best friend, Elena, and told her everything. She got furious with my parents, told me that what they were doing was emotional abuse and blackmail, and offered me her couch if things got really bad. Having that support gave me a bit of strength, knowing there was someone on my side when my own family was treating me like garbage. Elena also suggested I talk to a lawyer to make sure my parents couldn't access my money somehow, which sounded paranoid, but honestly, with how they were behaving, I wouldn't have been surprised if they tried something like that. At the end of the week, my parents sat me down again and gave me the final ultimatum. Either I gave the money to Austin, or I had to leave the house. No middle ground, no room to negotiate. I told them I wasn't going to give them the money, and my dad told me I had until Sunday night to pack my things and leave. It was Thursday. They gave me 3 days to pack up my whole life and get out of the only house I had ever known, all because I wouldn't finance my irresponsible brother's lifestyle. I spent Friday and Saturday packing. I didn't have many things, to be honest. I've never been very materialistic, so everything fit in like 6 big boxes and 2 suitcases. Clothes, books, my laptop, some keepsakes, important documents. While I packed, I kept expecting one of my parents to come into my room and say it had all been a test, or that they had realized how absurd they were being, but nobody came. Austin walked past my room a couple of times, watching me pack, and the only thing he said was that this wouldn't have been necessary if I wasn't so stubborn. I told him to go to hell. Sorry for the language, but that's what I said. And he laughed and said enjoy being poor and without family. Sunday afternoon, I called Elena, and she and her boyfriend came, with their truck to help me move my things. And my parents didn't even come out to say goodbye. They stayed in their room with the door closed. Austin was in the living room watching TV, and when I walked past with the last box, he said, "See you never. I hope." I left that house without looking back, although inside I felt like something was breaking in my chest. I stayed at Elena's apartment, sleeping on her couch. She and her boyfriend were incredible. They let me stay as long as I needed, didn't charge me anything, gave me space, but were also there when I needed to talk. The first few days were weird. Like I didn't fully process that my family had kicked me out of the house for not giving them $37,000. Sometimes I would wake up at night and for a moment forget where I was, and then I'd remember and feel this mix of sadness and rage. About 3 days after I left, Austin sent me a long message, like a complete testament, saying that because of me, his dreams were destroyed, that because of me, he couldn't move out, that I had ruined his life and our family's relationship, that I was a horrible daughter and an even worse sister, and that he hoped I was happy with my dirty money, because that was the only thing I was going to have in life, since no one would want to be with someone as selfish as me. It was super venomous and cruel, and normally it would have affected me a lot, but at that moment it just made me angrier. I responded with just one message, telling him that maybe if he got a job like a normal adult, he wouldn't need his younger sister's money. And after that, I blocked him from everything. One of the first things I did was contact a lawyer, one who did free consultations for students at the university. I explained the whole situation to him, and he helped me make sure my savings account was completely protected and only in my name, with no possibility of my parents being able to touch it. He also gave me advice on how to handle any future harassment or manipulation attempts. It cost me like $200 to do all the necessary paperwork, but it was totally worth it for the peace of mind. Meanwhile, I started looking for a better paying job because I knew that even though I had my savings, I didn't want to touch them except for my business. I needed to be able to pay rent and support myself without depending on anyone. I got a job at a digital marketing agency, basically as an assistant, but with much better salary than my previous jobs, like $18 an hour plus commissions. It wasn't incredible, but it was enough. And it also gave me real experience in the industry I was interested in. I started immediately. Didn't even wait to finish the semester, just adjusted my class schedule to make it work. About a month into staying at Elena's, I found a small studio near campus. It wasn't anything fancy. Literally, it was one room with a kitchenette and bathroom. But it was mine. It was my space, and I could pay for it with my salary, without touching my savings. I cost $650 a month plus utilities. And when I signed the lease, I felt prouder of myself than ever. I had managed to leave home, get a decent job, and have my own place, all in less than 2 months. And I had done it alone, without help from my family, without touching my savings for the business. During all this time, my parents didn't contact me once. Total silence. Austin didn't either. After I blocked him. Part of me expected at least my mom to try to call me, but nothing. It was like I had stopped existing for them the moment I walked out that door. It hurt. I'm not going to lie. It hurt a lot to know they had chosen pride and their ridiculous expectations over maintaining a relationship with their daughter. But it also made me see clearly what kind of people they really were. About 2 months in, I started getting weird messages. First was a message from my mom, super casual, asking how I was, like nothing had happened. She didn't mention anything about the money or kicking me out of the house. Just, "Hi, honey, how have you been?" I didn't even respond. Then my dad sent me a message saying he missed talking to me and that maybe we could meet for dinner. Austin also tried to send me a friend request again on social media. Everything felt super weird and manipulative, like they were testing the waters to see if I had changed my mind or if I was willing to come back. Then a family friend, Mrs. Martinez, who has known my parents since before I was born, contacted me and said she needed to talk to me about something important. We met at a coffee shop, and she told me that my parents had been saying all over the neighborhood that I had abandoned them, that I had left home to go party and live a crazy life, that I had refused to help my brother out of pure malice, that I was an ungrateful daughter who had cut contact with them for no reason. Basically, they were creating this completely false narrative where they were the victims and I was the villain. Mrs. Martinez had known me since I was a child and didn't believe them. That's why she contacted me to find out what had really happened. But she warned me that probably many people in the neighborhood were believing them. That made me realize that my parents had not only kicked me out and tried to steal my savings, but now they were also trying to destroy my reputation. It made me so angry that I had to sit in my car for like half an hour, just breathing and trying not to explode. I thought about sending them a message confronting them, but then I realized it wasn't worth it. That those people didn't deserve even one more second of my energy or my time. I had already made my decision. I had chosen my future over their manipulation, and I wasn't going to let them drag me back into their drama. I blocked my parents from everything, just like I had done with Austin. I blocked their numbers, their social media, their emails. I cut off all contact completely. It was liberating in a strange way, like I had finally taken off a huge weight from my shoulders. I no longer had to worry about their opinions, their expectations, their favoritism, their manipulation. I no longer had to watch them treat Austin like a king while treating me like a second-class citizen. I was free. And although that freedom came with the price of losing my family, honestly, I wasn't sure anymore if I had ever really had a family anyway. Now, I'm still 19. I work at the agency and study. I live in my small but comfortable studio, and I still have my $37,000 saved for when I'm ready to start my business, probably after I graduate in 2 more years. I'm saving more money, too, putting away like 40% of each paycheck. I have incredible friends who support me. I have clear goals. I have my dignity intact. I don't have family, at least not blood family. But I'm learning that the family you choose is sometimes better than the family you're born with. Sometimes I wonder what happened with Austin and if he finally got his fancy apartment or if my parents ended up paying for something. Other times I wonder if they'll ever regret how they treated me, if they'll ever realize they chose the wrong child to support. But most days I don't think about them at all, and that feels like the real victory.